Hello, everyone. I'm Casey Loftman, Editor-in-Chief of Food Engineering Magazine. Joining me today is Dean Wiltsey, CEO of RisePoint, a software company that offers quality management and auditing solutions. And we're going to be discussing how the COVID-19 pandemic is affecting operations and how companies can use digital tools to adapt. Dean, thank you for joining me today.
Hey, it's great to be here. I really appreciate it.
And to get started, obviously the COVID-19 pandemic has forced a lot of processors to really adjust how they do things on the fly. And some of these companies are still dealing with paper systems and things like that. So what sorts of challenges are food and beverage companies discovering as they're trying to make all these rapid changes? And how is this pandemic making these challenges more difficult?
So I would say the very first thing that maybe wasn't as obvious and evident at the start of the pandemic, but clearly it's all in the beginning, it's the employees, right? Is the consumers will have confidence in the brands when they're certain that the brands are really making sure that their employees are healthy. And so that's kind of step one. You know, we saw a lot of news around the trouble in the meat processing plants and other manufacturing, and how widespread that become was kind of shocking and surprising. So I would say step one, and one of the areas where I think we've recognized an opportunity to help is making sure employees are healthy, number one.
Right, because it's been kind of this shift. You know, initially it was, is it a food safety concern? That turned out to be no. Then it was, well, will there be enough supply as everybody flocks to the grocery store and things like that? And that seems to have held up pretty well as well. But now, like you said, we're starting to see this issue where it's an employee safety challenge. So what sorts of tools are processors adapting to be able to handle some of those employee safety challenges?
Yeah, so one of the things that we've implemented, and we're calling it our kind of back to business, but our check-in, check-out kind of step one. So we have followed the CDC guidelines, and we've had a mobile application that's been utilized for really over a decade, and of course naturally improved over recent years for auditing. Right, for what you might typically have thought before the pandemic of checklists, spot checks, you know, operational process being completed. And now we've made it so simple that we've created and we've had experts, former FDA employees and consultants design what we call a check-in, check-out form, which simply says every time an employee shows up for work, they could, a couple ways. One is you could have an iPad or a tablet somewhere where they check in, where they can go and just answer 3 or 4 questions. Or they could even download our application and have that on the employee's a personal device. So a lot of ways of delivering it. But first thing you want to know is, one, what is their temperature today? And you want to be able to take their temperature so you can avoid any situation right up front. Have they been around anybody that's had COVID symptoms, and have they traveled anywhere, you know, outside the local area in the last couple of weeks? And you can add a couple other questions, but you do want to make it quick because you want the employees not to have to take a long time to fill it out. But once you have that information back at the company dashboard or wherever they want to have somebody alerted and keeping track of the information, you're able to, you know, immediately monitor your workforce and the status of their health.
So the goal is to be able to get sort of those real-time updates on someone saying, oh, hey, you know, my temperature was a little bit elevated today, or, you know, I've, traveled somewhere over the weekend or something like that. So just help you try to catch some of those trouble spots before they turn into outbreaks.
Yeah, totally. And don't come into if you have a temperature over, I think it's 99.9 degrees, you can't come in. You know, you got to go home.
Okay. And then what sort of reception have you seen from that? Processors have been moving away from paper forms in a lot of ways over the last few years. But, you know, I'm still thinking about the classic scenario. Somebody comes in, they get their time card, they put it in the machine, it gets punched, take it back out. So how is this helping processors adjust to that initial workflow of getting people in the door while also providing this information that they need?
Yeah, I think it's an opportunity for them to also get the budget that they may have been looking for in the past, right? Because, uh, typically, there's budgetary process for certain things to improve the business. But with this pandemic that's occurred, certainly all the budget's necessary that you need to make sure that you get compliant and you're able to update your tools to make sure that you get the information you need to run your business in today's world. So in addition to the check-in, next I would is in the list of things they need is the sanitary process, right? There's basic fundamentals, regardless of the product you're manufacturing, is sanitary. How do you wash your hands? There's basic guidelines on washing hands and training, and those, again, there's ways to deliver that even in a mobile device or a checklist to make sure that everybody has been trained, right? So have you watched the hand washing video? You maybe have a manager of a shift that really attests and verifies that yes, everyone's seen it. We remind them they maybe have to watch it periodically. They've seen a demonstration, they've seen a slide presentation, and we've built and provided all those things I just mentioned. We have a hand washing video, we have a slide presentation and training that companies can get and start doing it immediately.
Right, and I think that kind of gets to one of the challenges of something like this is that people have their initial training when they come on board. You know, here's how you wash your hands, here's how you use your PPE, here's how you make sure that you're keeping your area clean and safe. But do they get that ongoing reinforcement of it? And now, of course, with this situation, they have to have that ongoing reinforcement of it. So having a mobile tool makes it a lot easier than having someone walking around with the clipboard saying, "Okay, did you watch the hand washing video? Did you do this? Did you do this?"
Yeah, exactly right. So, for a shift manager, maybe it's one of the first things that they do is observe to make sure that their employees are doing the necessary cleaning, that's supposed to be happening now, which wasn't necessarily a requirement, weeks ago. So not only do you have the training that can be delivered easily or more easily on a mobile device, but you also have a way to make sure that it's being followed up on and check on it on a regular basis.
Okay. And then to sort of expand this out a little bit, now how does this then tie into other ongoing efforts to move to more digital systems? Obviously this is a hopefully short-term challenge that we're meeting right now, but some of the things that we're learning now and some of the processes that we're adapting now are going to stick around for the long term. So how can processors take this information that they're learning now and then apply it to things in the future?
Yeah, really good point. So it is a standard that I think is obviously going to elevate quality, um, sanitary cleanliness, I think also employee health across the board. And one of the things that people talk about is the kind of the new standard. Well, I think the manufacturers ultimately they want their consumers to have confidence in their brand. And when you're able to confidently demonstrate that you as a brand are not only starting with your employees, making sure that they're healthy, that you're able to confidently express that you're training regularly, that you're monitoring regularly, that whenever there's maybe images of it within a manufacturing plant or just the way your product is viewed, to be able to attest that you've implemented these process, you're following up on a regular basis is just totally going to strengthen your brand.
Right, because we think about something like this, for a long time, people in the industry kind of had this expectation that, okay, it's flu season, so we're going to have a few more people calling out sick, or things like that. So maybe some of these tools can then be used to help stop some of those more routine outbreaks of things that we see.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah, it's going to be able to be utilized for any type of health situation, especially when you look at the CDC and the temperature requirement. That is certainly today because of the pandemic, but we know that in the past, typically when you do have the fall or in the flu season coming around, if you're monitoring temperature of your employees on a daily basis, there's no question you're going to have a healthier workforce long term.
Okay. And then I'd like to talk a little bit, like I said, this has been a huge adjustment for so many companies. They've had to adjust so quickly. to so many different challenges. But what kinds of success stories are you seeing out there? What are you seeing, in terms of processors who are having good success in meeting some of these challenges because they've been adaptive and flexible?
So I think that consumer confidence is the very first thing that needs to come back. And I know I talked about that earlier, but what we have seen is when brands have implemented and have the actual results of utilizing the new digital capabilities, they're using that as a method of helping to build confidence with their consumers. So, I'm sure that whoever we have listening in or listen to our talk today has seen in emails, right? There's from the airlines across all different industries, they're talking about new process that they're implementing. So trying to get us back to flying again. And I don't know about you, but I haven't flown in a couple of months. And we actually did a survey at our own company meeting recently, and none of our employees have done any traveling. We haven't as a company, but even on a let's say on a recreational basis, no one's traveled. But now the airlines and I think the FDA has put out some statistics that the numbers are gradually, slowly going up, but it's largely because of the communication about what the brands have done to make people more confident that when they do travel, there's process in place to make sure that you're safe to fly again. And so we're hearing the same thing from some of our customers, where they want to be able to communicate to their customers that they've got a plan and a process, so they will come back. And our product today is utilized, across food manufacturing to restaurants, large chains to hospitality, hotels, etc. And it is all about the same process that we're talking about when implemented for food manufacturing. You think about it across all industries, and it really does come down to wanting to make sure that your employees are safe, so that you can communicate that your brand is serious and that any of your customers is safety is first of mind to your brand.
Yeah, and you mentioned something interesting there, which I think is that a lot of food and beverage companies are adapting some of the communications techniques that we've seen from other industries over the years, but not necessarily from food and beverage. For a long time, it was, even in the case of a recall or something like that, it wasn't necessarily that they needed to communicate to consumers that, hey, our employees are safe. It was, okay, we're recalling this product because we had some sort of food safety issue. But the inner workings weren't communicated quite so much, I guess is the best way to put it. And now, as you said, we're starting to see a little bit more of that, where you might get an email from an airline and then you might get an email from a food company, and they're effectively saying the same thing.
Yes, yeah, good point. And I think too is in the food processing industry, since a lot of what we're making is going into, let's say retail, grocery, convenience stores, or even restaurants, that when you visit those locations, it's the brand of the past perception is one thing. I think the new experience is enabling brands to elevate their position by addressing these current immediate needs and demonstrating to the public that they're on top of it, right? There are brands that are doing awesome a job, and because the consumers are really seeing the attention to the cleaning, the lines, the distancing, 6 feet with the dots on the floor and the lines, etc. And there's others that aren't doing as well. And I think that from what we're hearing, there's also, I think, going to be some interesting studies on brand shifting, where maybe brands positioning were elevated in the past as a high quality brand, but now companies have an opportunity to really elevate their brand perception by addressing these things and making it more public, and implementing the process that they know will protect their consumers.
Okay. Well, Dean, thank you for taking the time to speak with me today.
I enjoyed it. No, anytime. This has been great. Thanks.
My thanks again to Dean Wiltsey, CEO of RisePoint, for his insights on how food and beverage companies are adopting to digital solutions during the COVID-19 pandemic. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.